we are like many Voyager attempts, struggling a bit with getting our technology right here. Having different people from different places signing into a new way of doing things. So it is really great for us to launch this initiative. I think, sort of Jaco and Marcus and myself have been talking about how we can assist in the process of social entrepreneurship and the promotion of that through the work that we do, and extending that into a broader discussion. Marcus specifically has done a bit of work in recording in an ebook 10 tips for running a good enterprise, social enterprise, and we'll be focusing on talking about some of those. Today on the call, you'll see Jaco Slabbert, Marcus Kutsia, and Shona McDonald. I mentioned we're struggling with the technology a bit. At the moment, we can see, Shona, that we're not so good at lip reading, so it is a bit difficult for us to, over the distance, get all the technology issues sorted out, but we're hopeful that soon they will be sound. In fact, the technology that we use here is fairly new to most of us, so we are learning as we go along. Starting off with a small audience of people that we hope will grow, and that the discussion around what we can do and what we can't do will eventually also contribute towards people that are entrepreneurial and want to make a difference in the world can do that effectively. So we've got a lineup, we've got some things planned. Hopefully we can get our sound sorted out so that we can all talk together. I see Shona is talking now, Jaco is trying to help her to sort out sound issues. So as we start off today, yes, Jaco, yes, Marcus.
And we did a sound test earlier just to add on Shona, and everything worked perfectly. So it's just a new technology bug has decided to appear this evening. And, Jaco will definitely get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. It's great to have people on the team that all bring different competencies, including understanding the internet and all these kind of computer.
And this is a very new technology in South Africa. People are very used to Skype over here, and Skype is fine, but Google Hangouts, it's the first time for a lot of people.
Yeah. For us too. So I'm fortunate that I'm also exposed to a new initiative where we in fact use the same platform with Small Business Connect, where I'm the publisher. And there I'm fortunate to have the help of some people that are steeped in radio broadcasting. So I'm learning quite a bit from them in terms of what we can and can't do, and how to keep the process alive and so on. Marcus, if I can ask you, while we hope that Shona and Jaco will both be back soon, if I can ask you, maybe from your perspective, sort of in us starting off doing Talking Social Enterprise, launching it as a platform for discussion, what excited you about this idea of bringing people onto an online discussion?
Well, certainly it's very new, I mean, in South Africa, and we've all got this idea of, and there's a lot of people talking about social enterprise all the time, and using the terminology of social enterprise, but I'd say, and there's a lack of understanding of, hello? Shona.
Oh, there we've got sound from Shona.
We've got sound.
Great.
Well done, Jaco. Well done.
Yeah, great. Great.
So, Jaco, what was wrong there?
I think Jaco is still coming back onto the call too.
Yeah, okay, back.
Okay, Jaco, what was wrong there, just for future reference?
Shona had signed in through Internet Explorer. So it was, we just switched over to Chrome quickly.
Okay, so that's a tip for future then.
Yeah.
Big no. Use the technology that the service provider like Google provides you if it's their Hangout.
Yes.
So thanks to Google for making this available to us for free. By the way, people signing in may notice that we may do some things like running a poll later on. So we have in fact subscribed to a service called Webinar Jam, that allows us to do some extra things with Google Hangouts, including the invitation process. So Jaco will tell us a bit more about the website and so on later, where people can sign up to make sure that you get a notice each time this webinar or this talk is aired, Talking Social Enterprise, because we hope it will become an ongoing event. Maybe as we start off, it will be monthly, but as it grows, it will become more often too. And we could, of course, also host the topic-specific discussions when the need arises. So it's really, it's for us to use. We can have up to 10 people as presenters, sort of, which means they can talk together, and we can see the pictures as long as the bandwidth allows that. And the number of people that can sign in is limitless. So, sort of, here we go. We can start a big discussion. So, sorry, we interrupted your point, Marcus, about what excited you about Talking Social Enterprise and starting it off.
And bringing it along is certainly there's a huge amount of interest on social enterprise in South Africa at the moment, but the concept is quite new, and there's a massive thirst, I'd say, for certainly everyone I'm chatting to about learning more about social enterprise. But the challenge is that these little hubs of sort of knowledge and activities have been very centered around the different universities. So all the universities are doing work in social enterprises. They're doing some exciting things. But the problem is, what about the person that is not connected with the university? How do they get that information? And for me, just creating something that will end up on YouTube and together with all of you is something that can have much more value, far more than just this evening's session. So
So that's another feature of this technology that we use, of course, is that it automatically records the webinar onto our YouTube channel, which is there for people to view in the future. So, as you say, it becomes a resource for future reference they can contribute to. Jaco, if I can ask you the same question, sort of what excited you when you first had a meeting? I think we had it there in Ops in a cafe. What made you say, yes, let's do this?
Yeah, interestingly, when as soon as you mentioned the idea, it reminded me that I'd actually been thinking about something quite similar to doing a podcast or some kind of broadcast show, where we can take a lot of the things that we experience all the time in working in the social entrepreneurship space and in the network, a lot of the access to the knowledge, a lot of the access to opportunities that we run into, that we don't necessarily always get to put out on a platform. Sometimes it just gets sort of stuck inside our heads and inside of our personal networks. And this is a great opportunity, I think, to get a lot of the information out to the rest of the social enterprise space, whether it's local or international spectrum. But beyond that, I think I kind of resonate with what Marcus is saying on social entrepreneurship being quite academically heavy in South Africa in many ways. And to a great extent, this show, I think, is about social entrepreneurship by social entrepreneurs for social entrepreneurs. There might be some academic discussion in it, but I think the idea is to keep it simple, to keep it fresh, to keep it relevant, and to keep it applicable. I think that's the most important component of it, that it's not just theoretical jargon, but actually stuff that you can hopefully walk away with and start applying to your thinking the very next day. So that, in a sense, is what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, great. So, Jaco, you would call yourself a social entrepreneur too? And if so, why?
I think that's a difficult question to answer. I don't know if I really consider myself a social entrepreneur, and I'm reluctant to call myself, even though I act like it a lot. But I think having had this conversation with Marcus a few times, the idea that what we're doing is very entrepreneurial. We're trying to try innovative, fresh ideas. We're trying to do it in a different way. We're trying to support the industry itself, even though our impact is slightly different than a conventional social enterprise or social entrepreneur's impact would be. Our impact is perhaps not necessarily on the environment or on children or a very specific focus group, but social entrepreneurs themselves. And I think that's a different spectrum of impact that we practice. So it's difficult to call myself a social entrepreneur without people asking, so what exactly is your social enterprise? But I think we apply a lot of the social enterprise thinking, and I think that's in that way I'd call myself social entrepreneurial. But whether I'm an actual social entrepreneur, I think that question is up for debate still.
Well, I would say if you can call your social entrepreneurial, that you would qualify as a social entrepreneur. whether you actually own and run a social enterprise or not. But yeah, so I think what is important for me is that we don't necessarily get stuck into the theoretical debates about, sort of how do we define social enterprise and so on. We can be fairly inclusive in terms of how we go about in taking on the challenges that we face and making a difference in the work that we do. So I'm very excited that Shona is here with us today. I think she's perhaps one of the icons in the social enterprise industry, and looking forward to a discussion that Marcus and himself is going to have in terms of how the way that you structure your social enterprise actually allows you to build a successful initiative. And so this is about to unfold into maybe an ongoing discussion too. But we do have a bit of a structure to our discussion here today. So Shona, if you can be patient for a moment, we'll come to chat with you and learn more about what you do. If there are people in the webinar that haven't met Shona before or that don't know what you do, you better stay tuned, because it is quite an exciting story. And it's not a short story; it's a story that's come some way too. So, Jaco, if I can pass back to you in terms of as we planned, sort of to include a segment in the Talking Social Enterprise webinar every month, where we reflect a bit about things happening, about news and events and anything of interest. And thanks for volunteering to research this a bit and enlighten us on what's about to happen and where we can actually link in with other people too. So can you, if you don't mind, Jaco, lead us into that segment of our webinar today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, I've got three quick items that I'm going to be discussing here. Just briefly, there's the Green Pop's Hogsback Reforest Fest happening in September. That's a nice event to go to. There's the Financing Impact Workshop happening in Hub Johannesburg, which I'll also speak about. And then a massive open online course being presented by the Wharton Business School. So the first one is the Hogsback Reforest Fest on the 12th to 14th of September 2014. Green Pop's Reforest Fest is hosted annually at the Platpost Forest just east of Gansbaai in the Western Cape. The music festival runs over a weekend where activities include planting hundreds of trees during the day and live music at night. In the first year, they planted 1,324 trees on a single weekend. And since then, surprisingly and quite amazingly, that number has grown to over 8,000 trees that they've planted over the last 3-4 years. This year, though, in collaboration with Reliance Compost, the festival is going to be heading to Hogsback in the Eastern Cape, north of Fort Beaufort. This forest is home to the endangered Cape parrot, and the Reforest Fest will focus on planting a few thousand indigenous trees to add to the parrot's habitat, but also remove many of the invasive species that are actually threatening the place. The festival is a fantastic experience. I've heard about a lot of people that have gone to the Platpost Forest one and have had absolutely rave reviews. It's a fantastic experience in itself, and it's a great way to support one of Cape Town's premier social enterprises. Most of you might know that Green Pop's been around for quite a while, and they've been doing an absolutely fantastic job. The tickets start from $330, and it includes all of your meals, music, and activities. You do have to book your own accommodation, but they've got plans for that as well. If you need more information, you can check out their Facebook link, and the Facebook link will be posted with links to all of these news items on our Facebook page, the Talking Social Enterprise Facebook page. The next item that's happening is another little workshop on financing. It's called the Financing Impact Workshop, being presented at the Impact Hub in Johannesburg. They are doing this in collaboration with the African Management Initiative, and they're offering 30 scholarships to attend a one-day training workshop to help social enterprises find and secure investment. This is supported by the Rockefeller Foundation, and the course is designed to help entrepreneurs identify sources of investment and teach tools to negotiate and close deals. It covers a range of topics from whether you're ready for investment to how to find investors and then closing the deals. And it is jam-packed with activities, knowledge sharing. This is happening on the 27th of September. And for more information, I'll also pop the link to the Impact Hub website on our Facebook page. And then the third item, and this is the last item for tonight, is this massive open online course that's being presented by the Wharton Business School. You might know that MOOCs are very popular these days. It's completely free online courses covering a really, really vast number of topics. This one specifically, the Social Entrepreneurship MOOC, it's coming up later this year on Coursera. Sorry, not actually later this year. It starts on the 8th of September. And this is being hosted by Ian McMillan, James Thompson, and Peter Frumkin. James and Ian are the authors of the Social Entrepreneurs Playbook that was released earlier this year. Some of our listeners or viewers that are out in or that are in Cape Town that may remember attending perhaps an event at the GSP where Dr. James Thompson was speaking about about the book that they'd released. This MOOC covers a number of topics. It focuses on teaching you how to launch a social enterprise, how to direct energy and limited resources to efficiently launching projects, and how to apply tools and frameworks to testing and scaling social enterprises. It's a 6-week course, entirely free. If you've never done a MOOC before, it's a lot of work on your own and work in group scenarios. The majority of your course material comes in video and in PDF format. It's really simple to do. It's a really fun way to sort of continue teaching yourself about social entrepreneurship. And even if you are a slightly seasoned social entrepreneur, this is a great way to just refresh yourself on some of the fundamentals of really what these kinds of models are about. And I'll also pop this with the rest of the information on our Facebook page, where you can find links to all of these items. So yeah, that's the entire list. Back to you then, Christoph. Thanks.
Yeah, we want to let you go very quickly. So, are you attending any of these events, Jacob?
No, I'm unfortunately not. I've recently finished actually a social entrepreneurship MOOC that started earlier in the year, so I'm not going to do the Wharton one now. But I would love to do the Green Pop Reforest Fest. I mean, it really is an amazing event. Lots of music, lots of great food, lots of really great people. It's a tremendously diverse community that gets together. So perhaps I won't maybe be able to do the Hogsback one, but maybe the next Platbos one is something to consider. So I also know, sorry, for anybody that's going to Earth Dance, I do know that Green Pop is also doing Earth Dance tickets, where with your ticket to the music festival, it also includes trees that they'll plant and send you the GPS coordinates and so on. So I'll also leave some information about that on our Facebook page.
Okay, so we created a Facebook page, as Jacob mentioned now, Talking Social Enterprise on Facebook. And we also have a website where we will also post a link to this a recording of this webinar for future reference. The website address is talkingsocialenterprise.net. So by the way, if you, in fact, I can show it on screen for you. I think it will show on screen now. The logo, I see Jaco's logo, but maybe, I'm not sure. Do the rest of you see the Talking Social Enterprise logo on screen now? You do. You're muted, Marcus. I see you talking.
And yes, I do see the logo. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I can see the logo, but not the Facebook page.
Okay, now I've just shown the logo. So this is also Jaco's great work. He's not only a good smooth talker, he's also a smooth artist in terms of coming up with logos. There's of course some symbolism in the logo. Some obvious, some maybe not so obvious. We can maybe chat about that some other time. But thanks, Jaco, for that news flash, if we can put it that way. I will have to go and read a bit more about all the stuff that you said. It was really packed with information, and some of those courses really sound fabulous. So isn't it great that we actually have access to this kind of support nowadays? In fact, if I think back when I started off in business in 1996, I didn't really think that I was starting a social enterprise at that point. In fact, that concept was not something that anyone was talking about. Although maybe if I have to define it today, it might have qualified as a social enterprise. So at that point in time, there was absolutely nothing like this available. So we're really fortunate. We have moved forward. We may not recognize it. And I would be interested to hear about Shona when she started off, what kind of support she got, and how she had to find her own way in doing things, perhaps as people that are early in the field have to do. So our program today basically will have the two main segments. The one being what we just did with Jaco giving us some news, and we hope that in the future we'll be able to build on that and provide ongoing tips on where to find support and what events are for people to utilize. The other segment is, and this is the main thrust of our discussion here today, which Marcus will facilitate for us. It is a discussion with Shona. So Jaco and myself aren't going to disappear, but Marcus, maybe we can start off by you introducing Shona and sort of then just lead that into a chat. We don't have to be too formal about it. So we'll be here. I don't think we're going to interrupt you too much, but we may have a question or two that comes up in the course of the discussion. We are aiming to stick to not longer than an hour format. So we've got about 35 minutes or so left today, and that kind of gives us good time. So I think we might not be talked out by the time the 35 minutes are up. But I'm looking forward to hearing what you say.
And let me know if we need to speed up the interview a bit. Yeah, can I take over? Perfect. And Shona?
Hi, Marcus.
Hi. So, yeah, and firstly, I'd like to welcome you to the show this evening. And, Shona, this is Shona McDonald, and from the social enterprise called Shonaquip. And we've known each other for quite a few years now. And for those that haven't heard or haven't met Shona, she's one of South Africa's leading social entrepreneurs. And she's both the founder and the CEO of Shonaquip, which she started in 1992. And just a bit more info. So Shonaquip is a social enterprise, and we'll use the term hybrid model, and that essentially means that it's a mix of a for-profit form as well as a non-profit form. And in case anyone doesn't know what a social enterprise is, essentially it's a type of organization which runs very much like a business. It has an explicit social purpose, and its profits tend to be reinvested back into its purpose to further its cause. And I know we could spend the entire evening debating social enterprises and how to define them, as a lot of the world is doing, but let's rather just get into the interview then. So yeah, welcome Shona to the show this evening.
Hi.
And perhaps we could start by, if you could just tell us a bit about the work that Shonaquip does. So what does Shonaquip do?
The company, the PTY, designs and manufactures specialized disability equipment for children who can't walk and cannot sit upright without support. And we provide community-based outreach seating services which are accessible into the community across South Africa, Namibia, now Botswana, and a bit of Zimbabwe.
Okay, thank you. And how many people has Shona reached? Because you've been around for 22 years, I think.
Yeah, we've so far made and supplied over 74,000 children's devices.
Wow, that's a lot.
And at the moment, it's been quite difficult. In the beginning, we didn't count the number of people we've trained or worked with in the field. But working on basic stats, it's adding up to close to 500,000 people directly impacted through our work. That's clinical staff, therapists, medical staff, rehab workers, and then, of course, most importantly, the parents and the caregivers and the children themselves.
Well, that's a massive impact, certainly.
Yeah.
And your parents seems to think so as well.
Just suddenly got excited by you. I don't know why, but.
And so you started Shonaquip back in 1992, then.
Yeah.
And what inspired you? Perhaps you could tell us a bit about the story that led to the founding of Shonaquip.
Yeah, it was a very personal story. I had a daughter. One of my daughters was born severely disabled. I then tried to find solutions to ensure she had a better quality of life, because I was advised by the doctors to put her in a home and have another baby. And it was through that work, really, teaching her, finding ways for her to communicate, and then working with many other parents to create a movement around disability rights and access to education, that I started realizing without the right equipment to enable children to sit upright, we would never be able to access education, let alone work environments, or be able to access any rights that were put into policy.
Okay. And you said that infrastructure wasn't there. I mean, I'm assuming what you were doing is different from wheelchairs and normal cushions and things.
Yeah, there was no infrastructure. I mean, my daughter was given a paper cardboard sort of macrame insert for her baby pram, and an old bath mat to sit in.
Okay.
And when she got slightly older, if I hadn't done something in between, she would have been issued an adult wheelchair by about the age of 4 or 5 by the procurement officer at the back of the hospital. And
so
I think
there was definitely a big...
Yeah, I mean, what we've worked on over the last 20 years is to introduce wheelchair services as a significant medical responsibility within the health departments of hospitals, and make sure that each individual client is properly assessed and fitted with the right device, which is now available through a government tenders process.
So your daughter's actually inspired a very huge impact through Shonaquip.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, without...
She's the source of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And back in 1992, what type of support did you get? I mean, when you started talking to people about wanting to set up something and make these wheelchairs and posture support, posture support devices, and were you able to get the support you needed? And I'm also curious about what led you to decide to register, I think it was a close corporation in your case, which is one of the for-profit legal forms.
Yeah, the first work I did was under the of 2 NGOs. So the first one was around alternate communication systems. The other one was around sort of educational rights and policy making, things like that. And through those 2 NGOs, which I raised funds for, I eventually, in both cases, got terribly let down by funders wanting me to do things in a specific way that was not needed on the ground.
Yes, okay. You mean they're dictating their own agendas?
Yes, sort of, and then of course, right in the middle of it, sorry, let me just get rid of this noise bird. I can't reach it. If what happened then was government encouraged all donors from overseas to donate their money through the NDA, which immediately cut all or most existing NGOs out of the funding cycle, and this resulted in a lot of our projects closing down.
Yes.
And it was in that process, because a lot of stuff ran concurrently, that I decided if I was going to do anything to do with wheelchairs, I would definitely do that in a different way, that I could be responsible and in control of delivery of what needed, in my opinion, to be done. So although I knew absolutely nothing about business, I decided to start a little CC. And it sort of grew from there. It was the purpose of the CC was purely a legal entity that would enable me to do what I wanted to do, and I had sort of basically committed right from the beginning that all profit would go back into.
Sorry, just your parrot. Yeah.
They're really being a pest, but if I lock them up, they're going to scream.
Yes.
So, yeah, what I had decided was that everything I did in the business would ultimately pay for the development work that I was doing in the NGOs. And that's how it ran. And it ran like that successfully for, up until 2010.
Mm-hmm. And in 2010, you then decided to set up, it was two different non-profit organizations to work alongside Shonaquip as part of a hybrid model. And
in 2010, I changed from a CC to a PTY.
To a private company.
Yeah, and I gave shares to then an MPO which I set up. And it was that
Ohumbo Foundation.
Yes, which we called the Ohumbo Foundation, and which is now growing from strength to strength in terms of its own very individual activities, but without it, we wouldn't be able to deliver on our social impact as we are now.
Okay, so how does the relationship, so you've got two non-profit organizations. There's Friends of Ohumbo Foundation in the United States, there's Ohumbo Foundation in South Africa, and then you've got Shonaquip, which is now a private company that has issued shares to Ohumbo.
Yes.
And how does this work for you? I mean, having a hybrid organization and...
It's been very interesting. You know, when we first decided to split the CC and reinvent it, it was extremely difficult to try and almost divide what we'd been doing in one entity into doing it into two. Like whose role, who did what, how do you do it, do you build a wall between the two? The advice we got from investors and funders was, no, you have to have two completely separate entities. They mustn't even talk to each other, mustn't look at each other, they must have nothing to do, everything must be arm's length. It was very upsetting for me because I felt suddenly I was stripping the most important part of the business out and sort of parking it somewhere where I had no control over it.
Yes.
And over the last 3 years, and with the help of an extremely proactive and insightful leader in the foundation, we're managing to build two organizations that really work closely together, although they have separate legal entities and they have separate financial structures. Exploring on a daily basis how to ensure that we keep focused on one purpose has actually become almost more important than the activities that we're doing on the side, because there's so many pressures against us for us to collapse this type of entity. Funders don't like it, banks don't like it, investors don't like it, and searching for the right partner actually takes an incredible amount of time and energy.
Because hybrid organizations are in the spotlight at the moment, and they're becoming quite fashionable. And with almost every week, I've got someone asking me about how do you set up a hybrid organization. And you've talked about some of the challenges of hybrids. And have you derived any benefits from creating Ohumbo and having it work closely together with Shonaquip?
Yes, I think we're now starting to see the benefits. We've stuck stubbornly to our objective against all odds. It's almost closed us down, the business side, because we funded the whole establishment of the foundation and the one in the States. And we've also been turned down, for example, by the Lotto for bad financial management and bad structures.
Because donors are very nervous about the relationship between two organizations in a hybrid model.
Yes.
Where they're scared that the non-profit entity will be subsidizing the profit margin of the business. And
yes, well, Lotto's opinion was that this was all a big con, and Shonaquip had a CSI department that was trying to keep it afloat. Sorry. And the banks, for example, see the foundation as a risk because it sucks profit out of the business. Yeah, investors like the IDC see us as not being profitable enough because we invest too much in the purpose of both organizations rather than in the profit making of the company. A lot of people push me to say, well, just have a really profitable company and then you can give your money away.
Yes.
You know, that's what you want to do. But that's not the point. And then you suddenly come across organizations like Elmer Philanthropy or SA Breweries or Old Mutual, and they get it. And I think there's a growing collection of corporates who suddenly understand the value of SED and ED working together.
So that's socioeconomic development and enterprise development, which are part of the Black Economic Empowerment Codes and their requirements.
In the beginning, SED or CSI was a very separate activity done in a company. And then the move of ED was sort of managed within the business part of the company. And it seems now, just in the last 2 years, there's a sudden swing to where the person that has been managing the corporate social investment or responsibility work, SED, has been given the mandate to also manage or coordinate the collaboration of ED into that department in order to reduce the number of beneficiaries, but ensure more focused, sustainable development. And I think this in itself is a huge sign towards the growing understanding of hybrid social models and the need to support a different type of social development activity.
Yes. I definitely agree with that. I've also noticed that trend. And just quickly, would you recommend that a social entrepreneur should consider a hybrid model?
I was quite amused when we started the discussion. There was a talk about, you mentioned a lot of activity around social enterprise is sort of hubbed around universities.
Yes.
And your question is very university. It's looking at how can models be replicated.
Okay.
And I would hate to recommend to anybody that they copy my model. Because if they truly want to pursue the needs of their user base, they need to find a model that suits their user base themselves. So I understand that it's easier to copy something, but it's not necessarily going to be right. I mean, I've met a lot of people who've started really successful hybrids. But, and I mean, Jesse from the Close to Cash Exchange is one of them, and we're working closely with them because our model is exactly replicated. And we're now partnering with them, so now we have 2 companies and 2 NGOs all working together for one social aim, which is really exciting. But I don't know if I would recommend anything to anybody right now. I know.
So it very much depends on the instance.
Challenging.
The organization.
It's very challenging. Yeah.
Okay. And you've been running a social enterprise now for over 20 years, and obviously that provides you with a huge amount of insight into the field. And you must probably have, I'm sure you've also seen the whole sector change over the last 20 years. And I mean, the term social enterprise, for one, is much more commonly used, and it's almost become jargon in itself. But what would you say have been the biggest shift that you've seen in the social enterprise sector since you've been involved in it? So the biggest change from 1992 when you started to now?
Well, I wasn't aware of anything called social enterprise until I was labeled one, I suppose in about 2008 or somewhere like that.
Okay, so quite recently then.
Quite recently. Then I think there's been a growing resistance from the NGO, MPO sector with the fear that this is going to influence their funding streams.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it has. The biggest change I'm seeing now is that people are starting to embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no longer as scary a monster as it was first thought to be.
No, exactly. I mean, when I started talking about, and as a strategy consultant, business and profit, and mixed with the social sector in the early 2000s, in fact, in the 90s already, there was a lot of hostility to those ideas. And gradually, people were listening but defensive in mid-2000s, whereas now we're seeing a lot of people wanting to learn more, realizing that there's certain cases when, a grant-based model is totally appropriate, and there are other instances where a more income generation is needed, to support their purpose.
Yeah, I think another big movement I've seen grow, and one of the concerns I've had has been around this impact investment field.
Yes.
Where I think with the decline of business, with the recession, a great number of investors have wanted to tick a social enterprise space. And yet the language they were coming to the discussions with has not matched with the language we use in the social enterprise space.
Yes, yes.
And I think that has also been, for me, one of the biggest challenges of trying to enter the field of impact investing, to actually, how do you position your organization? Because there's no doubt that we could scale massively, but how do you find the right partner that can talk the right language and actually understands that what you're doing is not just a financial investment with a tick box social enterprise, but actually a social enterprise with a small financial tick box.
Yes.
And that still remains, I think, the biggest challenge in the industry is how do we find investment to do what we're doing on greater scale, even when it's been proven to work.
Yes.
Because the history of investment has different priorities. So I think that's the biggest challenge ahead of us all.
How do you feel about social, and a number of social investors have mentioned recently that South Africa's social enterprises aren't business enough. They aren't good investments. How would you respond to that type of comment?
Then we're not a good match. They must look somewhere else.
Okay. Because it's definitely going to be a challenge still, to getting impact investors to appreciate social enterprises, and likewise social enterprises to prepare themselves properly to make themselves attractive to investors.
I'm sure there are social enterprises that are businessy enough. But I also think within the spaces we work and the challenges we have in terms of the actual development work, it's not as easy as investors would like it to be. And it's going to take another few decades to get the income flowing into these organizations in a way that addresses their desire for profit.
No, definitely, I agree.
Often that measure is made against developed world versus underdeveloped world. And it's not, and it's seen as South Africa rather than seen as the context in which we have to work in the field. Often investors will come to your office in Cape Town in a car, and they'll park and you'll have lunch somewhere, and it looks just like you're in France or New York. It really looks like a developed country. But the context in which we work is not often the place the investors want to go. They're not going to meet you in a deep rural village in the Eastern Cape where you're actually doing your work. They don't want to do that. They're in a hurry. They want to, and I think that's the disconnect. That you're judged within the context of the environment you have the meetings in, rather than the context in which they actually see you working.
And it's going to take a while still for that, for both groups to be reconciled and to understand each other. And we've also talked, over the years, we've talked about being a celebrity because you are within this field somewhat of a celebrity. You've won multiple awards, Shonaquip Foundation, Schwab Foundation, SAB Innovation Awards, a whole number of them. And to what extent has being a celebrity helped you, or perhaps it hasn't? I mean, how do you feel about being a celebrity?
I think it has really helped raise the profile of the work we do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's helped me at all.
So it hasn't brought funding and investment?
No, but I think it's raised a huge amount of public awareness. And it's given almost status to the work we do. But on one hand, it's also made people think that maybe we're making lots of money. That people don't
more
quite
profitable than you are.
read the whole story. They often see award-winning, and then they think of the wrong connotations. It also has distractions for the business itself. But, you know, when it comes to marketing, I don't think there's a stronger tool. I'm not the sort of person that really revels in it. I don't particularly personally enjoy it. I find it quite stressful. So I'm not the right person to judge that. But for me, it's been an amazing marketing tool. And I should think a lot of our success in changing the way people see wheelchair provision in South Africa has been driven by my profiles in the social enterprise space.
Because you're a very humble celebrity, certainly from my experience. So what are your plans for the future? I mean, where do you see Shonaquip going over the next couple of years?
Well, at the moment, we are opening our first Shonaquip Botswana, which is the first wheelchair services hub, official wheelchair services hub in Southern Africa. We're also busy exploring our partnerships in Namibia, Zimbabwe, Kenya. I think most importantly for us right now is we're looking for the ideal ED partner, and we're in communication with discussions with 2 potential partners for that, because we really are ready and we've proven our model, and we really want to take this forward now and see our investment in our new product designs and our modeling taking off. So I think that's where we're going. I want to seat another 70,000 children in the next 10 years.
And definitely moving into Africa, outside South Africa.
Yes, but we've also had requests to move into India, the UAE, to Turkey. There's even Poland. There's a great demand for what we're doing, and I think that's been stimulated by our work in World Health Organization, and now this recent award I had for RESNA, the American Rehabilitation.
And so, American Rehabilitation who? And sorry,
it's the Association of Rehabilitation Workers in America, Northern America.
And you were talking about exporting when we last chatted as well, about getting export licenses or specialists in exporting and tariff barriers and all of that. Is that still in process?
Yes, we're still in that process. We've got certification of our products, but again, without the financial resources to get the best people possible, which big business would immediately invest in, and they would not have the bank wouldn't have, or investors wouldn't have a problem with them employing really good, high-quality staff. There's somehow a big resistance to a social enterprise doing that. People still think that your staff should be martyrs and work for nothing. You know, there's this real conflict in people's minds around value systems associated with development work versus corporate. And getting the investment into the business is still the biggest barrier.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm being eaten alive.
Sorry, and your parrots can become famous. Sorry, and just last question then is, for a young social entrepreneur who's listening to this show, and what type of advice would you give to them? I mean, they're starting out in their journey. They've got an idea. They've got all the passion. And how would you advise someone like that?
I'm not a good person at giving advice, Marcus. You know that. I'm a good one at asking for it.
Okay.
I think you just need to, if you really believe in what you want to do, and you think having a hybrid model or running an organization where the profit goes towards pursuing the purpose, then do it. If it works for you, keep going. I think the biggest challenge we all have is to make sure that we do not develop mission drift forced by either investors or funders or our own fear of risk.
Yes. So develop an appetite for risk and keep true to one's purpose and be mindful of investors and donors. I mean, work with them, but keep your heart on the goal.
I think that's the biggest challenge, is to turn your dream into reality. You need partners and you need to work with multiple people. You can't do it alone. And unfortunately, the one group that you need on board is the funders or investors. And to find the right matching funder, somebody who truly believes in that you will achieve your goal. I think that's our biggest search.
Okay. So anyway, that's the end of end of our session. So thanks so much, Shona. I mean, I've learned a lot more I knew about Shonaquip, but I've learned a bit more through the session. And yeah, so thanks so much for joining us on the show. I'm sure that your parrot has now become famous. And will account for a lot of attention on this video.
I thought he'd just stay quietly out of sight, but yeah. Okay.
And handing back to Christoph, yeah?
So before you run away, Shona, I think we'll have to make it a condition in our for future people joining the show that they have to bring the pet along.
Yes.
It will make for lots of amusement, I assume.
Well, if people get bored of
but thank you very much. But thank you very much, Shona, not only for sharing your story here tonight, but for being inspiration for a lot of other people. And I think you may not know that. I mean, you might be taking the awards and feel that you undeservedly in the limelight sometimes. That you may feel that, but it's all deservedly so. And you are a real inspiration, not only in terms of what you've achieved with setting up Shonaquip and serving that purpose that you've defined. And I really got this from you tonight, is that if we are clear on what our purpose is, we can overcome a lot of challenges, as you've explained today. That piece of advice, I think, is worth a lot for anyone starting off or building a social enterprise today. So thank you very much for that.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks.
We can, of course, keep the discussion going into other platforms, like Facebook allows us to do so. So there may be, I see you already posted on Facebook the links to those events and training courses that you mentioned. So we will be using this on an ongoing basis to trying to make Talking Social Enterprise not just a hangout, but a place where we can keep the discussion going. So perhaps maybe, Shona, if you don't mind, if there are some questions coming onto the Facebook page, we'll let you know. Maybe you can participate in that discussion there too. So we're kind of heading towards the close of today's show. I want to try something which, as I said earlier, we are learning about this platform too. And I want to try something here which I hope is going to work. I'm going to try share the screen with you in terms of a quick coaching tip. But to do that, sort of as things are, I need to be in the right place. So let's see if I can get that done. I thought I was in the right place, and now I'm not. I'm not. So I'm not going to try that. Oh, I know where I am now. So let me just get to the right place. There. And if I go there, then I should be able to share my screen with you. I'm also sitting with two computers, so that makes it even more difficult. So I think you should now be able to see something called the hedgehog. Can you see that? Okay, Jaco, you muted. Marcus, you muted, so you were talking now, but we can unmute you. Can you see that?
I can
see it, yes.
Yes, we can see it now.
Yeah. Okay, so as Shona was talking, I was thinking of this. So by the way, I work as an entrepreneurial coach a lot with people, and this is one of the concepts that I've found very useful for people that are purpose-driven and want to make a difference. And especially if you start off, you don't necessarily know exactly what it is that you need to focus on. Now, this is a model that was developed by Jim Collins after he researched very successful commercial companies. This isn't research about social enterprises. It's about big firms, and especially if they have experienced a bit of pressure, what they do. And what he was finding is that all of them do the same thing, is they, like a hedgehog, when there's a danger, it kind of curls up into a little ball. And that's where the name of this concept comes from. But what he says is that if you think of yourself, and firstly your passions, and you draw a circle, and you describe all your passions, the things that you are really kind of serious about in that circle, and you then draw a second circle which overlaps with the first, and you start write down all the things that you're good at, that you're proficient in, that you can perhaps do better than other people, and you then draw a third circle where they overlap in 3 areas, and you think about what is possible, profitable, or what can create income. And the idea being that you're going to find your purpose where those 3 interlock. So we can do it as a quick exercise, and we can say, okay, let me list all the things that I'm passionate about, or the main things that I'm passionate about. Let me make a list of the things that I'm good at, or better at than other people, and let me make a list of things that within my realm I know are opportunities that will create some funds to flow. And where those three circles then intertwine is perhaps a clue for you in terms of finding your purpose and what you can do. And I think in Shona's story today we heard that, that certain things happened in her life that made it very clear to her what her life purpose is going to be. And for a lot of us, it could happen in the same way. So this is just a quick kind of coaching tip. We are kind of close to the hour, and we need to be mindful that that hour is the respected time that we want to conclude the show in. So Jaco, if I can come back to you. Do you perhaps have a last quick question for Shona before we start out? And I also just want to ask you, we did discuss in future we may have some tips for people on the show and so on, what we can look forward to in the future. So, but first, if you do have a question for Shona, if you don't, then you can jump right into the tips.
Sure. I don't think I have so much a question for Shona as I do have the opportunity to tip my hat to her for doing a fantastic job and doing a lot more than I think she ever expected she'd be able to do without even really intending to do so. So we really commend you, and throughout the space, as Marcus mentioned, I mean, being a celebrity, you've done a fantastic job of just showing us that you can do it, even if it's tough and even if it takes a while, and even if you've been doing it for many, many years before people even knew what a social entrepreneur was. So yeah, I truly commend you for that. With regards to what's coming up in some of our other shows, I'll be bringing you guys a few insights in social media tips, some marketing and communication tools that you can utilize to get your social enterprise out there. Exactly what that will be and how the format will work, we'll sort of see as time progresses. But I think initially we'll start with a lot of social media stuff and then start transferring from that into more real-world application. Where if you've got limited budgets to really get your message out there, what can you do and what can we learn from other social entrepreneurs? I'll be taking some examples from the days when I ran my own guerrilla marketing social enterprise, as well as from guys like Greenpop, how they've built an amazing brand with very, very little capital resources to actually put into marketing. So we'll go through a wide variety of topics, hopefully starting from our next broadcast at the end of or middle to end of September.
Yeah, and there's of course also the scope for people to ask for things to discuss and so on. But I want to come back to you, Marcus, just in terms of signing off for the show today. You've in fact written an ebook on some of these topics that we will be covering, including what we discussed today. We will be posting a link to that book on our Facebook page and on our website, I hope. Can you just perhaps just briefly tell us about how we can get access to that ebook to read a bit more about these topics?
Okay, well, firstly, there's 2 ebooks, and the first one looks at how to think like a social enterprise. And it isolates 10 distinctive things that, or types of thoughts that all social enterprises have, that anyone can apply to the organization if they're a business, if they're a non-profit organization, if they're already a social enterprise. And it tries to unpack the paradigm of a social enterprise. So that's one ebook. There's a lot of information there. There's also a great example of every principle. And Shona is also featured in that book. The second ebook, which is relevant, is one on hybrid social enterprises and the pros and cons of the different hybrid models. And we draw upon the experience of social entrepreneurs with hybrid models. And once again, Shona is featured in that book. And so if you want to learn more about Shonaquip or get those 2 ebooks, we're going to be putting links to them on the Talking Social Enterprise page, and I believe also on the Talking Social Enterprise website.
Yes, so just to confirm, thank you very much for that, and I would advise that people go and download those ebooks and read it. I've had a look, and it's really insightful. So both on our Facebook page, which we use for communication, so it's a Talking Social Enterprise on Facebook, and then the website is talkingsocialenterprise.net, and it's English as opposed to American spelling of enterprise with the S. This was our first try. I feel that we did quite well. Of course, the proof of the pudding is always in the eating, and how these kind of initiatives are used to have impact out there in terms of solving social and environmental issues. So I'm very hopeful that this could become a very powerful forum for sharing ideas and supporting each other in going out there to do great stuff. So for today we're done. Thank you very much, Shona, for joining us, Marcus and Jaco for working with you. I'm really excited. I've told you guys it's really great to work with you. Hopefully we can go out and make a difference and create a community discussion here that will last for many years. So looking forward to our next show. We'll post that on our Facebook page and on our website. Have a look there. If you've signed up, you'll also receive a reminder in your email inbox. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you too. And goodbye for now.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Shona. Thanks, Jaco and Christoph.
Thanks to everyone as well. Thank you very much, Shona, for joining us for our first one. Marcus and Christoph, thanks to you guys as well.
It's a pleasure. Bye.